intrigued by instinct and the circumstances in which it can really flourish. For example, I've been classically trained, admittedly many more years ago than I'd care to mention. But that training can stay with you, or at least the modality or mindset of it can, if not the skills. I also have this sort of tendency to analyze things, which is it's like watching a political debate. It's mind-numbingly tedious and totally pointless. I've got far better at that. Going with my instinct as I've got older, and it must be that thing of really not caring as much as you do get older. But it intrigues me how an analytical nature and the pull of instinct have kind of cohabited through my lifetime. And sometimes it feels like a bit of a metaphor for the many paradoxes that exist in the world today. Now, I mentioned this because for me, instinct is very much evidence in my guest music, which is a real sort of clash of musical styles. And for me, there's been a noticeable evolution in the soundscape from her first EP 5 years ago, which comes through on her latest album, Salvation, which was released on the 7th of June. And it makes me think about our own evolution, life, identity, experiences, as well as a desire that I think we all possess somewhere, and that's to experiment, let the subconscious do its work and see where it goes. So, Anna von Raison, also known as the artist AVR, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for giving up your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward.
Definitely. So the new album, it's been out a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
How tell me how you were feeling because this is your debut EP, debut album.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a bit of a longer story because technically I always knew, like, for me, the most difficult thing about starting AVR after coming out of quote unquote a career, of being a studio pianist and working on compositions for brand and film. And I realized, okay, I need to, in order to stay happy working exclusively for other people, I need to have a side project where I can just do things musically and aesthetically, basically more or less 100% of what I want to express. And very soon, when I embarked on this endeavor, I realized, okay, I need to take this pressure off myself that this one debut album could possibly express or represent what I want to stand for musically, lyrically, aesthetically. So very soon it was clear for me that I wanted to start out with a trilogy. So I had 2 EPs and this album now that you call it the debut album, which is also absolutely fine because it is the first album, long player LP after 2 EPs. But technically these 3 releases belong together. Yeah, it's an evolution in a way that kind of culminated in this album. And yeah, and this is the genesis of me as AVR musically. And now I'm moving on to the next thing for AVR from there.
Wow, yes.
Hope that makes sense.
No, it does totally, yeah. And it feels, again, it sort of, to me, it sort of feels like an evolution, and each EP and the albums sort of feel eclectic, and they feel like they have their own sort of evolution within them. I mean, what was sort of going on? Were your life's experiences sort of impacting what you were writing about, and how you kind of viewed the documents musically?
Sure. I mean, it's probably impossible not to be influenced by your own life, but I do think that some musicians express more of their own life in their music than others,
Yeah.
What I liked about the idea coming out of jazz and classical music going more into somewhat of a pop cultural realm, musically or genre wise, was more trying to find things also that sit in terms of subject matter, quite universal. I wanted to talk about my own experience, but maybe not as let's say, as defined as, let's say, Taylor Swift's song or something, that's really like a diary entry. I wanted to talk about my own experiences, be vulnerable and authentic, but at the same time, I wanted to keep it a little bit more surreal, abstract, and therefore relatable. Anyone can put themselves in that But yeah, of course, my life in general influenced also, especially musically, you know, my past, especially in jazz, also influenced, but also classical. It's probably impossible to separate those two.
Mm.
Heavily influenced these all these records. Yeah.
I think that you know that your point about the about the music and the words, sort of, the relatability. It's
Yes.
like being relatable. It's a word for me that has become used in different in the way that people use it now. The meaning has sort of changed, but I think that what you're saying is absolutely right, and I still think it's a very valid and important thing to have in anything in our life where we're trying to connect with people and sort of
Yes.
establish that sort of relationship. Is like that other people need to be able to relate to it, and I think music is sort of perfect for that.
Absolutely. I think music, like, I was thinking about that earlier. Like, music has this crazy power. Like, you know, there's
Mm.
this quote, like, music is the mildest substance we can abuse, even though I'm not personally so fond of the word abuse in this context,
Yeah.
but like maybe just use. Instead, I think people have obviously a longing to have moments in their all day life every now and then to step out of the ordinary and
Yeah.
have these like more transcendental, if to say, moments. And I think music is just such a crazy tool for this, like for
Mm.
these shared humanity moments and like a mutual, like a shared ecstasy to some degree, you know. And I
Mm.
mean, yeah, I guess that then comes down to the listener's taste, like what music does that to you, you know. What brings you there, basically.
It's an interesting one. How you yes, how you make the music sort of more relatable. I remember reading it was a book by Bad Religion, the US
Right,
the US sort of punk band. They were because they've obviously been very political.
right,
That's what they are. They write about sort of political and social issues. And
right.
they were debating themselves about how to put that message across, that perhaps preaching, sort of saying this is not the right way to do it, and it's more, sort of
Right.
giving information, sort of talking about things, letting people make up their own mind. And I think that, yes, that kind of abstract way that you just mentioned, so that people can then, it makes people think. And I think once you
Yes.
start making people think, then you've got something.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, yeah, I wouldn't want to deliver like a musical manual, like how to be the right political being in our
Mm,
society or the right person in a
mm,
relationship. I don't think I could do that.
yeah,
Nor
yeah.
should I. Do I think I should? But I think, yeah, definitely. I think anything that leaves a little bit of room to the surreal, or like any form of a little bit of abstraction, for me
Mm,
has always been an invite for myself to actually kind of like merge myself into another situation,
yeah,
in my mind. So yeah, for some people it may also be inconcrete, I think it comes down to how things resonate with you, you know what I mean. I
yeah.
like to keep things a little bit more open because, yeah, it is more universal like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we don't want to be, kind of constrained by meanings. I mean, that's too much like a,
true.
sort of like a training framework, isn't it? And and
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
for
the way
sure.
the way that we get taught things as we're sort of growing up. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, go back to when you were younger.
Yeah.
Your I mean, what things sort of stick out for you as your sort of formative
I mean, I
influences
had
or
a
or
very
events?
formative experience, like around. So, first of all, I started with classical piano training around eight
Mm,
years old. So,
mm,
relatively late if I would have wanted to just be a classical pianist,
yeah, yeah,
Um, kind of too late almost already for all the competitions and stuff, because, the people you would compete against then would already play for 4 or 5 years at that age, like eight, nine.
mm,
So, but then, yeah, anyways, I just played classical for a few years, and after like 2 years or something, something, or I don't know, I don't remember, like my teacher was already telling my parents that I had enough talent to become professional if I wanted to. And at the time I was
Wow.
like, hell no, I'm not going to be a pianist. I wanted to be a doctor, you know?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I really like first, like always loved music and it strongly resonated and it came easy to me. Like I didn't have to practice as much as other people to get good results, which was kind of nice.
That's really nice.
But but then I quickly also started having jazz ensembles around like 14 years old or something,
Mm.
and visiting more and more jazz concerts. And actually, my most formative experience ever was like a Herbie Hancock concert in
Oh, wow.
where he played the music of George Gershwin with like an amazing band. Carolyn Carrington on drums. It was like some kind of like like Wayne Shorter. It was kind of an all-star band, and
That's amazing.
I just remember like sitting there and thinking, "Oh my God, really, there is nothing that has ever felt better in my life than
Yeah,
this. So I
that's
need
amazing.
this in my life." And
Wow.
yeah, from then on, this whole jazz piano thing took off, and I wanted to learn more and more and more about jazz piano and where I'm coming from. There's actually not one professional musician that studied jazz like academically. It's quite like a rural state where I'm
Mm,
from. So I had teachers that knew much more than me, but they were still not, you know what I mean, on like London level, or you know what
right.
I mean. It was still, they could teach me, but it had its limits. And so I had to learn a lot also from recordings and just from playing. And so yeah, that's basically, that was one of the main things. And then yeah, I studied piano later in Amsterdam and a little bit in New York with my mentor Jason Moran.
Mm,
And yeah, that has definitely been a strong influence in my life, of course, you know, going through this
wow.
whole academia thing of music. It's just so intense, and competitive, and it kind of shapes you in all kind of ways, like good and bad. And yeah, I didn't particularly enjoy it, to be quite frank about it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what the actual sort of formal training?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
studying, like the university
Mm,
degree things on like piano, the competition is just so crazy, and especially in jazz, I'm like usually the only girl in the room.
mm,
And at that age, like 19 to like 24, 25, it was just majorly uncomfortable in many moments. Just like,
wow.
yeah, it's the jazz scene is quite a macho scene in general, and it's not. I haven't even noticed. I couldn't have put my finger on it at the time, but
Mm.
now looking back, I realized that that was a big part of the problem. Yeah.
And
And I
have
also, yeah, sorry,
no, no,
like last
no, no, carry
comment.
on. Mm,
I always wanted to do things differently already then. Like I wanted to really find my own voice in improvisation also on the piano. And sadly my teachers, especially in Amsterdam, they were all about just studying history and
wow.
playing like people have always played, you know. That's their whole goal. There was
Mm,
no such thing as finding your own voice or pushing the history also of jazz further or looking for what's next. There was absolutely no interest for that.
wow.
Um, and that was uncomfortable. You know,
I
it
bet
just
it.
didn't fit well.
I bet. No,
Mm.
I can totally understand that. I mean, it seems I don't know why that is the case. Whether it's the sort of what do you think? Is it set by the institution? Is it
I think it's the
the
people.
teachers,
It's the people. Yeah,
the
it's the people.
people?
I think their focus of the piano jazz teachers class, which is like, you know, you had usually 3 to 4 students per year, right? And we had like 4 jazz piano teachers. And their whole thing was also kind of trying to play as good as the masters, also
Mm,
besides the teaching, you know, the kind of records that they released and the kind of stuff that they were playing in their bands on the side of, like, besides teaching, right?
mm,
So I think that was just what they focus on in their life as an artist or musician. And sadly, they had very little interest in that other people could have other perspective. And I know that there is at least one much younger teacher in Amsterdam now that has a completely different outlook on things. who was a substitute teacher at the time that I studied there, for instance. And yeah, so with him, things will change. It's all made by the people. There's no
Yeah,
higher
yeah.
plan. But
It's
yeah,
it's so sad. I think. I mean, I think
yeah,
that the that
definitely.
this that the history and the the backstory of how jazz evolved to get, or even any kind of music, whether it's classical or whatever, has got there, but it can't coexist with how that evolves. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, jazz of all the music genres is
Yes,
the
exactly.
most improvised, the most avant-garde that
Yeah,
that you can have, and it just seems very counterintuitive that
I
the structure
agree.
that you had is completely the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, jazz was always trying to challenge the status quo and be
Mm,
disruptive.
mm,
But especially in Europe, I feel, but actually also in America, I think there's a strong scene in jazz where it's just about basically paying your due to tradition and still playing bebop, like Charlie Parker has never died, like we're just like
yeah,
continuing the same language. And I think there's a very, very strong traditionalist scene in
mm,
jazz that has very heavy opinions. I just remember, I don't know how deep you are into the jazz world, but I remember the saxophone teacher in Amsterdam at the time was saying that Wayne Shorter was like the worst saxophone player of all times. And I think he's widely regarded as one of the most influential and best in the history of
mm,
jazz. But obviously, he was more part of a modern movement, and they just didn't like it. And it wasn't enough to say it's not my cup of tea. They had to go and say he's one of the worst of all time because he's not playing bebop. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I mean,
I
this
mean, I
this
hate
is
to say it, but I
mm,
also feel like it has to do with the fact that it's the scene is just of instrumentalists is just 95% probably men.
yeah, yeah.
I just
It's true.
think it doesn't
Yeah,
sit right. It's something about that is just too stiff of a ship.
yeah.
Um,
Where
I
you
don't
just
know.
have kind of like sort of one demographic, and that never changes.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't. Yeah, it's. I mean, the whole thing is about culture is sort of mixing those cultures, and that's how things evolve. If you don't have that,
agree.
it makes it
Yeah,
very difficult to
yeah,
to kind of break out of that very tight circle that you've made for yourself.
for sure. Yeah,
I remember. I know. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a jazz drummer called Justin Brown, and
yeah. He's amazing. He's
oh,
one of
he's
my
amazing.
favorites.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
he's fantastic, and I got
insane
to.
drummer.
He's,
Yeah,
he's insane. I got to know him
insane.
because he went into this band called Off,
Mm-hmm.
who are from Los Angeles, and they play very fast, like kind of very intense, loud, kind of like hardcore punk rock, if you want to put that into as a genre. And and
Interesting. I need
and
to
I
check that
remember,
out.
yeah, well, I know Dimitri from the band, and he was telling me
Right.
when like when Justin came in that he was I've never played this style of music before. I don't think I'll be good. And you have this insanely good drummer, and it was
Yeah.
interesting the way that he from his point of view, it was about his own evolution and
Right.
development, sort of playing this style of music that he was not confident in playing, but
Exactly.
wanted to give it a
Mm-hmm.
go. And he was amazing, and he really changed the sound. He brought in much more kind of like sort of jazz elements to the band. So there was
Yeah.
this sort of fusion going on, and it was really great. Um,
Amazing. Yeah.
but I just love that sort of stuff, where where and that's the sort of thing that we need, where people are prepared to take a chance and to take a risk and
Totally.
do this.
Yeah. I mean, also, and as you probably know, and all, of course, in all the musical genres, like especially with drums, the drum set sounds so different. What's like a
Mm,
standard pop drum kit sound is like far away from the standard, if that even exists. But like, let's say the average jazz kit or like
mm,
playing progressive rock or whatever, you have completely different cymbals. You tune
yeah,
you know what I mean? The whole drum set is tuned completely different. I know that because my brother is like a metal guitarist, And then suddenly you
Mm.
have like two floor toms or double
Yeah.
bass, like especially around the drums, I find it's like quite, yeah, the genres make quite a heavy difference,
Mm, mm.
around this instrument. So I could see how for a drummer it could, even of the insane like level that Justin Brown is on, being like definitely one of the probably 10 world best drummers at the
Yeah.
moment in jazz,
Yeah.
but that it's still like, oh, this is a completely new thing. But I think that's where the most interesting things probably emerge.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. That you're totally right. That's where you do get the interesting thing. You go from, something that could be. I mean, they weren't, but it could be sort of fairly straight, and then
Yeah.
somebody else comes in with some different influences, and it changes that
Yeah.
dynamic, and it
Yeah,
gives a
totally.
completely different experience. I think that's so exciting.
And every band ultimately, obviously you are at home in a specific genre, but you also want to sound fresh. And I think that's where the freshness starts, when these kind
Yeah,
of thing come in, something happens that's just different. And
yeah.
that's usually where I'm getting very, very interested.
So this is a good sort of time to talk about that, maybe. So for
Yeah.
yourself, kind of keeping your own, kind of creativity fresh and new. How do you do that?
Oh, good question. I mean, I wish I could say like some of my musician friends or producer friends that they just listen to so much music. I have to say that in the last years, I listen to music to inform myself
Mm,
about new releases or something on Spotify, but I don't really like have this practice like some people to go for 2 hours a day and listen to like new releases or something like that.
mm,
So I feel like I'm getting influenced a lot by like the world, just things I perceive in all their life. And I'm really
mm,
heavily into politics. Like
mm,
politics lead to also shaping the status quo in like popular culture. I'm heavily influenced of art. Like I love seeing museums and all kinds of gallery shows of contemporary art is a huge thing for me.
mm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of more like my influences. I don't know. It's not. It's a little bit abstract,
Yeah.
probably.
I think
But yeah,
yeah, no, 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 carry on.
yeah. The thing with me is like I think you have different types. Like you have some artists that tend to have a problem like to get inspired or to know where to start.
Mm,
And they have like they maybe have writer's blocks occasionally or things like that. I mean, I feel like I could never have that. I have this absolutely abundant brain that just like all the time has new ideas, and I just my life is not long enough to even, you know what I mean,
wow.
put like a quarter of them on paper. Also, of course, they aren't all amazing. That's a given. But I just have, there's no moment ever where I'm bored or where I don't know where to start or what to do or where to take it next. So like I
Mm.
feel, yeah, yeah,
It's
that's
interesting. A
more
lot.
my, yeah,
I was before we started recording. I was saying that I started doing some graphic design, and I sort of took a short course. I'd never done it before, but it interested me,
right.
and I so I really love doing it now, and I found like it was interesting what inspired the designer that inspired me to do it in the first place, or didn't inspire me, but his work inspired me, is not the one that I'm particularly inspired by now. So that has sort of
Yeah,
changed.
yeah,
But it's funny, isn't it, that I've realised that as I'm doing it, that some things just visually don't look right, and
right.
they don't kind of they don't really kind of say yes, that's the one to me,
Hmm.
and it's hard to know what does it. Just something will happen, and I'll just draw something, or kind of put some text or a graphic,
Right.
and that just works. And so there's no, I personally don't have any kind of logical way. It just, what's inspiring me at the time, and then something just happens and it clicks, and it just
Yeah.
it just works. And it's interesting, like I was saying in the intro, my kind of the side of my brain that's analytical sort of struggles with that because it's like, well, how did you arrive at that? And the other side of which is the intuition side is just saying, well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It did. It's
true.
fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know it's true. Like we sometimes we also want to redo something that worked really
Mm,
well, and then that's never working, because
yeah.
yeah, it worked in one room at one moment, and it won't work in the next. I think that's I don't know. I'm just in generally also quite analytical person, I would say, but I'm also a very emotional person, and I like to basically in music, I try to think as little as possible and just let like my subconscious come to the conscious
Mm,
world and just like basically first it's all chaos and it's all coming to the surface, and then I'm like trying to put some order to it
mm,
and edit it and then see if there's anything that I want to use, or if that's just something that's gonna have to lead me to a place that's a bit more
yeah.
relevant or things like that.
So
Yeah,
I'm interested how you manage that with your background
yeah.
of kind of training in a in a within a framework and a formula. How do you then sort of change that to be more intuitive and sort of spontaneous?
Yeah, I would say it took a long time. Like after studying, like I don't know, I was so like studying jazz and classical piano was just like I feel like I had like almost all the possible information, at least about Western music,
Mm,
in my head. And then at the time, I remember when I thought I did something very simple, like people were telling me, this is not simple. This is still extremely complex and is really not easily digestible at all. And I was thinking, wow, like this is already like the most stripped down thing I could have thought of at the time.
yeah.
So yeah, obviously, I mean, I was interested in doing things in the realm of popular culture because I wanted to find like um, I wanted to find the sophistication more in simplicity versus in the complex
Mm,
that I knew from jazz or from like, classical music from the 20th century. Yeah, and then usually I start with melodic ideas.
mm,
Sometimes or often there will be like a little bit of a lyric, like puzzle pieces on it already, like no
yeah.
full sentences, but some kind of words that
Mm,
describe a vibe. And then I start to like just record stuff in Logic Pro uh, and start to develop it
mm,
basically. It's really that. Like I
yeah.
put melodies in, then and I have a chord progression idea, then I put the chords in, then I change it, then I try to take a break for a little bit, or maybe a day or even or a week, and just see how it feels later. And my process is so far has been very slow also, right? This album that I released, I took 4 years to make it. And I'm trying, like I'm I have funding for an EP for the follow up now. And
Yeah.
the good thing is that the funding gives me a natural deadline. So basically, in the
Ah,
next
yeah.
7, 8 months, I have to have this EP ready, which is a
Mm,
new nice challenge that I'm happy to encounter, just to make stuff less complex, maybe in terms of production, and less elaborate or less, yeah, I don't know, less full maybe, and
yeah.
just like focus on less elements, just polish them and just get stuff done faster. It's like a
I
new approach.
are you would you call yourself a patient person?
And when it comes to music production, 100,000%. Like
Yeah.
I'm a perfectionist, and I can sit for like yeah for years on productions, right, and on
Mm,
mixing and just figuring out every little tiniest detail until I feel like okay, I know this is not perfect because it will never be, but this is perfect enough for me to say
mm,
this is it. So yeah, I definitely am very, very patient with music. In life, I'm really not patient. I sadly have road
mm.
rage. And I generally I speak fast. I do everything fast. I'm generally someone that needs to learn to slow down and sit back, you
Mm,
know. But with music, I have insane patience. I feel like all my patience goes into music. That's why there's nothing left for the other for the real
that's
world, you know.
true. Yeah, that's a good point actually. I mean, it's
Yeah.
difficult, like in this world, to be patient because
Hmm.
because we've got used to everything happening immediately. You know,
Oh
with
yeah, for sure,
in like
for sure.
in our day to day lives. You know, and
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy that like another thing that I worry about is attention spans.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
especially for younger generations, you know,
yeah,
for the teenagers now and stuff. Yeah.
it's really tough. I even find myself for me, I think it feels like it's harder to read a book
Oh, definitely.
than
Yeah,
it was
harder than
even
ever.
2 years ago. It's like, oh my god,
Absolutely.
what is happening?
Yeah,
Keep my mind on things. I have to find something that's
it's true.
so engaging now from from the first page
It's
that
true. Or
if
like audiobook, right?
yeah,
It's easier in a way.
well, interestingly, I struggle with audiobooks.
Hmm.
I find my mind wandering.
Even more.
I've
Yeah.
tried them, and I'm like, why can't I concentrate on this? It's crazy.
Yeah.
I used to be really patient at reading things and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I can't do it now. Like, well, I
Hmm.
don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old or something. I don't know, but
No, but
yeah.
I hear that from a lot of people. I mean, some people still like are really good at reading. I have friends that read like 2 books a week, but
Wow.
I think that's quite rare. I mean,
Yeah.
most of my friends say that they struggle even to watch a movie without looking at their phone. You know what I mean?
For somebody like you, on a related note, for somebody like you that is really really sort of open minded and experimental and bringing in different influences, do you find that there are so many influences in the world that you have to be pretty good at eliminating those that kind of don't work for you?
I think it's actually for sure. I think what you're saying rings very true. Like for me personally, because I'm into so many things. I mean, in general, in arts also, and just anything aesthetic, but
Mm,
also certainly with music, genre-wise. That for me, one of the hardest parts is like to shrug everything that's not essential off, and just try to find some kind of a musical identity and
mm,
brand that is not
yeah.
just like lost in everything that's out there, you know. At the same
Mm,
time, I feel, you know, that our time is probably like when I released my first EP as AVR, or at the time I was still called Anna VR. When I
mm,
released it, I noticed that also in my circle of friends, like they didn't say it, but I knew it, you know. People were thinking, "What the hell is she doing?" You know,
wow.
I was pairing this sort of classical piano with like auto tune vocals, you know, which was like, what
Mm.
the fuck? Then I had these like excuse me, like
No, no,
super
no.
cinematic strings, you know,
Yeah,
that were like from a movie, and all this together. I think people were thinking, what the hell is this? And I know that nowadays, I mean, 2017 and now 2024, you know, it's already a long time.
yeah,
No one would think that anymore because there's more and more artists, luckily, that train the ears of the listeners into these more like adventurous musical lands. You know, like
yeah.
people don't think like you. I don't know if you can imagine. I remember when we did the promotion for my first EP in 2017. And even though I had this like very academic past, so and I was a producer and I did everything on my own, etc., etc., a lot of music blogs that were still a thing, you know, these days music blogs are not a thing anymore, but like it was about Hype Machine and the Hype Machine blogs, you know, this whole time.
Mm,
And the blogs were saying, we don't review auto tune music. Like we got like we didn't get like 80% of our reviews for this EP because I used auto tune on my voice.
wow.
Like this sounds like a medieval story, but it's actually
Yeah,
just
wow.
2017. That was
Jeez.
already for some people like, oh, no one can do like pop songs that have like a seriousness but at the same time use autotune like trap rappers. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And or Rihanna, and I was thinking, oh my God, like where are we? And no
Mm,
one would say that anymore, because
yeah.
everyone knows. I mean, first of all, I don't really use autotune in my album at all, but also it's not like people were really thinking you use autotune because you can't sing and you can't hit notes. Like people weren't aware that that's just a color. It's like an instrument that you're using, right? That this has
Yeah.
nothing to do with, oh, you need to correct like wrong notes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which you could also do with Melodyne anyways in a way more,
Mm,
sophisticated way. But yeah, so in that sense, this evolution happens so quick, and I feel like this whole genre mix, and is, at least in music, is becoming more and more common. Like the pluralism,
yeah.
like the
I
yeah,
completely agree with. I completely agree with you. I think it's yes. It feels. It's weird, isn't it? It feels there's a band that I really like called A Certain Ratio, and they sort of
need
really,
to check that out.
yeah, they started in. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? That they started in 1979,
Right.
so they're kind of like probably sort of early 60s now, and I'd say that they're probably playing now the best music that they've played,
Wow,
and
amazing.
it's really kind of, they started off as a kind of sort of post-punk band, and then they brought in a drummer who brought in, some influences from sort of Latin and soul,
Amazing.
and gave it a real kind of feel. And they've really experimented with with these all these sort of different influences. And I remember when they took a break for about 10 years and then brought out a new album in 2020, and that's only 4 years ago.
Right.
And it feels like so long ago that they brought that out.
I
It's
know.
just kind of weird, but you're right, that kind of time thing,
Yeah.
that in that sort of 7 years, things have changed an awful lot.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure. It's crazy. It really is. It's yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we will be in 10 years, I can't
no,
even it's just everyone is kind of overwhelmed with the speed of change at the moment, right? That's like kind of the overarching theme of like every other
yeah,
conversation that I have with people.
yeah. I think 'cause
Um,
I mean, it was interesting what you were saying, about your friends saying, about, you know, mixing these sort of styles, and why you were
yeah,
doing that. I mean, linking that into that, the getting those sort of, well, even though they didn't say it directly, you knew what they were
yeah.
thinking, but thinking back to linking that back into your experiences at college,
Mhm.
about the almost the staid atmosphere that it's not uh encouraging any sort of improvisation, or kind of like outward thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
And how did those things sort of affect your own self-belief and sort of
Oh my
self-confidence?
God. Like I'm so like, I'm generally someone that like I walk in a room and I feel like everyone looks at me kind of person. So
Yeah,
I'm
me
always a
too.
bit scared, like
Yeah,
even at a doctor's office when I have to go to the waiting room, I'm already like, like so
yeah,
I'm definitely someone that I don't know, has struggled a little bit sometimes with social anxieties.
yeah,
But
yeah.
weirdly, when it comes to my music, I really feel, especially with this project, and especially after working, for these brands, like working for Dior, working for
Mm,
Mercedes-Benz, for
mm,
Louis Vuitton,
mm,
working a little bit for other artists like Charlotte Gainsbourg, like just being in
yeah.
service. And I love that. I really
Wow.
love the
Yeah,
psychological aspect of being in service to find what other people are searching for.
yeah.
I really, really do enjoy that. But with AVR from the beginning, it was so clear to me that I had to do that. I was onto something there that was very specific, a very specific feeling that I wanted to have myself from this music. So no matter how it would sit with other people, I had to do it anyway. And I
Mm,
obviously I hope that after this album and with my next releases that what is so needed for this project is a little bit more infrastructure in terms of finally like a new management and a new booking agency that I can take you to the next level with it. But like
mm,
I still I can't compromise with this project.
yeah.
And also I mainly know also that my friends thought what the fuck is this at the time, because they tell me that now they get it. And that's the funny thing. They're telling me like also with this
Yeah.
album now and everything, they're like, man, when you started out, I was thinking like, what is this? Like, this
What is
doesn't
this?
fit here. It
Yeah.
doesn't fit there. Like, why is this? What is this? How many things is this? Like, how, and you don't know how many people also tried in yeah, from the music industry, because they privately liked my music, to try to put me in contact with more label people, with this and that, like with all kind of like infrastructural elements like touring, booking, and people
Mm,
always say they like it, but because it doesn't fit a drawer, it's like no
yeah.
one can really help. Like, and I feel, or doesn't know
Mm,
how to help, or they don't want to take the leap of faith, or like risk it a little bit. Because if you think about it, like this, even the music from 2017 that my friends looking back maybe didn't understand, they were, all the singles were played by BBC Six from the start. And if
yeah.
you think about this, I was no one. I had like no big label. I didn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't like
Yeah.
supported with like big financial backup. That I just from the beginning got some kind of a quality stamp, okay, this has the quality to be on some kind of international attention level. But which also led me that I could talk with some executives from like relevant labels like 4AD or whatever, beggars people, but it
Mm,
never led to a signing yet. And it's just, I think it's very hard because people always ask you, yeah, who are the relative artists? Like, who sounds like you? And then I'm like, yeah, actually,
yeah.
no one.
Mm,
And then I'm like, I hate to say it, but I could say a little bit of him, a little bit of her. But, and
yeah.
then already the fantasy of a lot of people, ends.
I totally hear you, and I mean, what you're saying,
Yeah.
like, is exactly what I think.
Yeah.
I've had this, sort of issue with genres that I think
Right.
we get, that it's sort of been it's that like genres have been created by the industry,
Yeah.
to help with its marketing,
Of
to help,
course.
and
Uh-huh.
all, but also to I think to kind of keep people in their lanes, in
Right.
their boxes, so
Mm-hmm.
if you're sort of like a sort of black musician, you're only allowed to play what they say you should be able to play, which is like, like, okay, stay in
Yeah.
the hip hop, stay in the soul, you're not allowed to play punk
Yeah.
rock and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's
Totally.
it's crazy, and that I think has conditioned further our brains, that we, when something is outside of that, we or doesn't fit exactly in those boxes, that we struggle with it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like exactly like you were saying, well, who
Yeah.
do you sound like, or what box do you fit in? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole thing, this is the bizarre thing about music. It's not supposed to be about boxes. It's supposed to be able to be completely free. Yet there's an industry that's been created that has done exactly the opposite.
Yeah. No, for
It
sure. For sure.
it really frustrates me when I hear you and hear other artists saying that these are the obstacles that are faced, which is just insane, when it's the music that's being created, and it's these little. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
Yeah.
I'm getting frustrated.
No, I mean, it's true. At the same time, obviously, being an artist, being a musician is an enormous privilege, and not everyone is meant to be able to live off that.
Mm, mm,
I'm not one of these artists who thinks that we are universally owed by the world to be able to make a living from our artist
yeah,
outpourings. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think there lies also a really really weird and entitled thinking behind that, if you know what I mean. That
yeah,
sometimes, especially on social media, in some posts, goes also on my nerves. It's like, there's also the reality that also in history, not everyone could live off their artistic endeavors. And I know it's very
yeah,
sad if you and actually can be crippling, if you feel that that's your calling, but sadly, you can't make it financially viable for whatever
yeah,
reason. You live in the wrong place in the world, like where I would, where, like Gordon was saying, how Berlin is a place for techno. Berlin is definitely not a place for my music. So I struggle a lot with that lately, because
mm,
all the success and feedback that I ever had came from London or from the States, like LA or New York. And
yeah,
and then thinking, damn, I maybe need to finally face the truth and actually try to relocate. But
mm,
these cities also are enormously expensive, so it's also not that easy.
yeah,
Next to visa questions, obviously,
yeah,
to just move. But you know what I mean? It's this
Yeah.
fine line between. I find there's a little bit of an entitlement, thinking that we're owed to make a living, to be able to make a living of our art, and of course wanting to do that, and yeah, you know, and then also the
Mm,
reality, obviously, that a lot of artists are upper class children who don't need to make the money, you
yeah.
know, that
Yeah.
they have other sources of income or live rent free or whatnot, you know. And I
Yeah.
understand the frustration that lies in there, and yeah, yeah, it's all these aspects at the same time, you know. That's the
No, for
reality.
sure.
Yeah.
What was the sort of the catalyst for you to, move out of doing, kind of like sort of score work and into and to started on your own as AVR?
I mean, the thing is that I never really moved out of it, because my biggest passion, and also next to like seeing how far I can get with AVR, you know, my goal and hopes for the future is to work way more just on film, you know. I would
Mm, mm,
like to try to get out of the like brand kind of work, and work really more on film. I have
yeah.
some I have some songs like in US movies that I wrote before, that were just picked for scores. But
Yeah.
I would like to write original music for movie scores in the long run.
Mm,
But yeah, my main thing, like I said in the beginning, was with AVR that I wanted to do one project where I can just like realize my own musical vision,
yeah.
to like 100%, right? And not compromise. But I was always aware that I can't count on making a living of that. You know, I obviously can't make a living of it yet.
Mm,
And there's also a chance I will never, you know. Of course I hope for it, and I do everything I can to make sure that I hopefully can.
mm,
But yeah, who knows, you know. I mean, yeah, I'm happy that that I'm a producer, and that I'm a studio pianist, and that I can do all kinds of jobs on the side, you know, like recording for other people, producing for brands, yeah, hopefully do more and more film
yeah.
scoring, and yeah, do like all kinds of things around it that also allow to not take compromises, right? In the end, with my own project.
Yeah. I mean, the work with brands, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that what 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 does that sort of give you, if that makes sense? In terms of sort of like your own,
Next
kind
to
of
money, you mean?
next to money. Yes, next to money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because sometimes, especially with fashion brands or also car brands, you know, I'm a political being. I know of all the things that are and all the problems that our planet is facing.
Mm,
And
mm,
sometimes, of course, you ask yourself also a bit like, is this a smart way to contribute your talent into like, yeah,
yeah.
brands that basically, you know what I mean, this whole thing.
Yes.
But at the same time, like musically, or like from a producer perspective, I really like I said in the beginning, it's more like a psychological exercise, like trying to find out what exactly they're looking for, and trying
Mm,
to find out like how to make that like spot or like short film, whatever they have there, like
yeah.
powerful, and fit their brand musically, and yeah, and just create something there that's also meaningful in the realm of brand content, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as well. I mean, these are all different kind of, in the context of mindset, all these different kind of skills and ways of approaching things, and the way that you build relationships are all kind of
For sure.
important, that are gonna stay with you, for when you make that, kind of full transition,
Yeah.
into sort of AVR as being your primary, and so hopefully sort of sole thing that
Yeah.
you can sort of work on. I mean, these are sometimes yes, there are compromises that we perhaps need to make.
Yeah.
Um,
For
and
sure.
there's sometimes a pragmatism that we have to face, because kind of corporations, brands are sort of everywhere. It's
Yeah.
hard to disengage from it completely. And
Yeah.
sometimes it gives you other things, and if you've obviously got the huge amount of talent for doing that. Um, it's
Yeah.
means to an end, I guess, sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, exactly. I also have a few students that I teach,
Mm,
and like some advanced students in piano, or like two like kids who I really like, who are like friends, kids, and so I
mm,
have I have right now like a really interesting mix of things that I can do. But of course, I don't want to say that like it's all just like fun and games, because occasionally I
yeah,
also ask myself how many time, like how many hours have I spent into my project, and also money, frankly, right? Like mastering
yeah,
music costs a lot of money.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not doing a lot of like visual like video work, just simply because it's just like unaffordable.
Mm.
But it's still, I have done a video like for the Philip Glass collaboration, right? We did a very
Yes, sorry,
immersive.
I meant to mention that. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
fabulous.
thank you. Yeah, that was definitely a big deal for me. That was pretty unbelievable that they wanted to publish it on his own label. I never
It's amazing.
expected that in my wildest dreams. Yeah, it's
Wow.
thank you. It's really it's been, yeah. I
I
almost didn't tell anyone because I couldn't believe it, and I thought I need to wait until the day it's out to see if that is real. Like I
how
couldn't
did that
grasp
all
it,
come
you know.
around, Anna? How did that all come around, Anna? I'm really,
So
it's
yeah,
fascinating.
basically, it came around also half on me being completely naive and just like thinking, oh, I really like the second piano etude by Philip Glass, and I've played it a lot and stuff, and actually played it also with my students who liked it a
Mm.
lot. And then I thought like, oh, maybe I can just like in my like just like I did on my first EP, just fiddle around with it a bit in Logic and just add some stuff and take some stuff away. But at the time, I was sadly completely blind to the fact that this guy is actually alive, and that unlike the artists that I've been like where I took like little samples here and there,
Ah,
they are like dead over 70 years, so the composer rights is actually free, so you can
got
just
you.
like, yes. So with Philip Glass we had everything ready. Like I had the song ready. I mean, song, it's not a song, but I had this piece ready.
Mm.
And we had done the video because like some of my video friends were extremely inspired to do a video.
Mm.
And only then did I realize, damn, I called my music lawyer, and he was like, yeah, you absolutely need to ask for permission.
Wow, yeah.
And that's was pretty crazy, because for months we didn't really hear from them, and I was already thinking, oh my god, like I can't believe we did all this possibly for nothing. Anyway, to then be very, very relieved at one point and getting this email saying, we really like everything, and if you would be open to that, we would like to release your rework on Philip's label Orange Mountain Music.
Wow.
And I was like,
Wow.
okay, what is this? Is this a joke? It's like sometimes you get emails as a musician, like through Instagram, probably. It gets into my email inbox, like from, let's say, XL recordings, we want to
Mm.
sign you and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
like, it's
yeah.
like, yeah, dude, like, you don't want to sign me. You're not even, you know. So I was thinking, is this one of those? I was like, what? So anyway, so yeah, that's what happened. And that's the crazy thing about these, like, this kind of permissions, that basically you have to finish all the work and then
Mm.
ask for permission. You can't ask for permission beforehand, right? Because
Yeah,
then they will
yeah.
say, please finish the work, and then we'll say yes or
Then we'll
no.
decide. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the story of the Philip Glass rework. Yeah.
What an amazing effort that is. That's incredible.
Yeah, that was a crazy ride. And also, if I had more time, I would love to work on a few more reworks,
Mm.
potentially also in a similar vein. Had I known also that this would be released on his label, honestly, like I would have liked to extend the piece much more and create a much more original piece. It's
Yeah.
fairly short, and I didn't take it to crazy places. Like I would have much more ideas, like where this could have
Mm.
gone. And but yeah, little did I know at the time.
Well, that's maybe I don't know, maybe this is the sort of the catalyst for,
Mhm.
for other pieces. Now you have that relationship and that contact there.
Totally, totally. Who
What
knows,
does
you
it so
know?
I'm just to sort of finish off as a sort of
Yeah.
broad question, like, kind of where you are in your life now, what does a successful life look like for you?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think, even though my parents would say that I should think more about my retirement, and that I should start saving more and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, things that I guess parents have to say.
Parents have to do. Yes, I
Right.
remember
I
that
also
one.
said it's okay, parents. You're allowed to say all this, but I just want to remind you that I literally have decades in front of me to secure this. It's not like I'm retiring in 10 years from now. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, you know how it is. I mean,
Yes,
that's how it is.
exactly.
I feel that's a thing. Like, obviously, in all honesty, I would love to focus much more on my solo project and maybe even have the privilege to focus on it like entirely.
Mm,
At the same time, I would love to score. I would love to score like movies more. I mean, I think that's kind of like the duo that I would love to be occupied with, like a mix
mm,
of my solo project and that. But you were speaking more broadly, like of a successful life. I feel like already that's what I think to myself also, even though these two things are not like the case right now, that I can just solely focus on that. I feel like that I've been tremendously lucky with all the collaborations and work that I've been asked to yeah, just generally where I was involved, and and
mm,
and
mm.
I think really like a successful life is honestly mainly health. And I know that from experience because I have friends or family where when health obviously goes down the drain, then nothing else matters. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It sounds very cliche, but it is just very
It's
true,
very true. Yeah, yeah,
and I think as long as you have enough moments where you, I mean, friends and family, obviously, and not having to be worried about paying rent is also a very comfortable state
yeah,
to be in.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, but for the rest, I think for me personally, to be creative and and have enough moments in this creative work where you feel like, this is where I'm doing it every now and then. It's obviously not every day, that's impossible.
Mm, mm.
But like, every now and then it's like, yeah, this kind of like strong resonance between yourself and the work, or being in studio working with other people and just being together, like, wow, like we're really getting somewhere. These
Mm,
beautiful moments of creativity, I really live for that, to be
yeah,
honest. And as long as with all these different things that we've been elaborating, that I'm doing, that allow me to pay my bills, like I'm very fortunate to have enough of these moments to keep me going. And yeah, I'm probably one of those where like I've never second guessed like my choice of being a musician. And
mm,
I know I would allow myself to second guess it. It's not like I don't want to admit to myself that, oh my god, this journey is so difficult, I wish I didn't take it. I just really feel like, yeah, like this is, I think it's what I want to do. It's the best I have to offer
no
somehow,
regrets. No regrets.
no, absolutely
Absolutely.
not.
Yeah, it's the
No,
best
no,
way to
no.
live your life. Yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant. Thank
yeah.
you so much, Anna. That was really, really inspiring. It's been great to talk to you.
It was been great to talk to you, and yeah, I hope it made a little bit of sense.